Hello. Have any of you ever seen a political campaign become an entertaining reality TV show? Today, I would like to talk about how Volodymyr Zelensky, a comedian who became the sixth president of Ukraine, did exactly that. In just 3 months, he revolutionized political campaigning in Ukraine and, in my opinion, the whole world. Ukraine is a country which you might recall for two reasons. Oh, Americans made a cool movie about their nuclear power plants, and oh, Americans decided to impeach Trump because of them. But other than that, we're a pretty ordinary European country, a country that is at war, a country that is partially annexed, partially occupied, has the second worst level of corruption in Europe, and the lowest income on the continent. So it would be a logical question to ask, how the hell did we elect a comedian to be our president? Sure, USA might have done it, but they're not at war with Russia. They can have fun. But Ukraine? I mean, look at the candidate field. To start off, there are 39 of them. 39. 39 people in Ukraine genuinely fought. War, corruption, destroyed economy, I can solve all the problems. I mean, look at this ballot. It's 80 centimeters long, for God's sake. Among those candidates, we have the, at the time, president, Petro Poroshenko, first nation leader following the 2014 revolution, who had the chance to become a national hero, but chose to be another corrupt politician. Yulia Tymoshenko, a former prime minister, described by third president Yushchenko as the only man in Ukrainian politics. After all, if people really wanted a complete change of course, we had Yuri Boyko, a supporter of the overthrown President Yanukovych, and who is also allegedly sponsored by Kremlin. All of these candidates were consistently polling at over 10%, but Ukrainians decided that the comedian was the right man to be in the office. So, how did that happen? Being a comedian is not enough to become president. You cannot just become president for simply mocking our hated politicians on a weekly basis. Zelensky had to convince the people that he was the right choice. Now, how long might they take? A year? 2 years? Perhaps even longer. However, the answer is just 3 months. On New Year's Eve of 2019, Zelensky officially launched his campaign for his night TV show. To add charm to the announcement, 1+1, the channel that aired his show, displayed his announcement instead of President Poroshenko's nationwide address. So, while the whole country was watching Poroshenko, 1+1 viewers watched Zelensky begin his campaign. At this point, he was already polling at 13%, following many hints at a potential run, which put him behind Tymoshenko and Poroshenko, with only two going through to the second round. A lot of ground had to be made up, and unconventional methods would make him stand out among the other 38 candidates. So, what was so special about his campaign? We live in a world of huge technological advancements, and social media controls our lives. Yet, old-school things like politics rely on the old methods of communication with the public. Television. Look at the US, for example. Campaign ads are such a big deal, websites like 538 track which candidates spend the most money on those. Debates, those are also aired on national TV. Now, Zelensky took on the role of a politician of a new generation. Too many promises have been made on the national TV, and just as many of them were blatant lies. A new approach could convince the people. You can't just give an interview and gain people's trust, but using social media was the way to do it. The aim was simple: show that Zelensky is learning on how to run a country. There was no need to present himself as a professional. People just wanted to see an ordinary guy in charge of the country and not a hypocritical, corrupted politician who sends his children to study abroad, runs illegal businesses, and goes on holidays to the Maldives, not hinting at anyone in particular. On 25th of January, Zelensky submitted all the necessary documents to the Central Electoral Commission of Ukraine and uploaded the first video to his campaign's YouTube channel, The President. In just 1 week, he gained almost 120,000 subscribers, with even more views on his first video, How to Become President and Remain a Human. The media effect created by his candidacy and methods of working with the electorate had a positive impact on his rating, putting him at 21.9% at the end of the month. In just 31 days after starting his campaign, he was able to increase the rating by 9% and put himself ahead of both Tymoshenko and Poroshenko. Now, Zelensky obviously wasn't the most experienced person when it comes to giving interviews. He's a comedian who is used to memorizing pages of text, but when it comes to generating answers on the spot, especially in a field you don't know very well, you can set yourself up for an embarrassment. Now, how would Zelensky's team avoid this problem? The solution was rather simple. No interviews, no embarrassments. Zelensky minimized his interaction with the mainstream media, with his advisors like Raboshabka, Razumkov, and Daniluk giving detailed and thorough answers to the journalists who were trying to set up traps for the future president. Only one major press conference was held 2 weeks prior to the elections, mostly with the foreign leading magazines such as Der Spiegel, The Economist, New York Times, and many, many others. In the meantime, his YouTube channel had been thriving. After it was established from various opinion polls that he's gaining the most votes in the age category below 30, it was vital to ensure that those people would come to the voting stations, given a clear correlation in Ukrainian politics of the elderly being represented more than the politically abstract youth. A series of videos were made guiding the voters on how to ensure their vote doesn't get stolen by the current government, and the idea of ignoring the elections was shamed severely. Not voting became an embarrassment in Ukraine, and many were drawn to put a tick in their ballot just to avoid that. Among others, voters were taught about voting abroad, ensuring they're on the voters list, and possible monetary incentives that could be offered by Poroshenko's team. People were reassured that they can take the money and still vote for any candidate. Through this policy of public humiliation and shaming, Zelensky's team was able to successfully maximize the young voter turnout. Zelensky's lack of TV appearance raised suspicion among the older and more skeptical electorate, who are used to seeing politicians who are good with words talk to them from the TV screens. In response, Zelensky's team maximized the effect of the free advertisements available to all candidates. They are staged and they run on TV, something Zelensky was very used to. The aim of the clips his team made was very simple: show that Zelensky is ready to be president. While all the other 38 candidates used the same platform for every person in Ukraine, television, Zelensky used different platforms for different layers of the population. On Friday prior to the elections, he symbolically voiced over Ronald Reagan in a documentary about the 40th US president, with whom he had been compared with throughout his run. As the elections approached, there was still one problem within the logistics of the campaign. Votes needed to be protected from fraud. On 28th of February, the first video was uploaded to his channel, urging the voters to become election observers. In just a month, over 13,000 Ukrainians signed up through the campaign's website. This meant that, on average, Zelensky had loyal observers in 9 out of 20 polling stations, truly unprecedented in Ukraine or anywhere else in the world. While other candidates had to spend money to have their votes protected, Zelensky did not spend a single cent. People were willing to do it for free. On 31st of March, the first round of the elections took place. Zelensky was projected to poll at 26%, but when the action time finally came around, the emphasis on the voter turnout played its role. And when the national exit poll became public at 8 o'clock in the evening, Zelensky was projected as a clear frontrunner with 30.4% of the vote. But the work wasn't done yet, as he would face the incumbent President Petro Poroshenko in the second round of the elections 3 weeks later. Other than ridiculous claims of drug addiction, Kremlin affiliation, and strong ties with oligarchs, the only reasonable thing Poroshenko was able to capitalize on in his fight against Zelensky was the lack of his opponent's live appearance on TV. Poroshenko had been involved in politics for over 2 decades, and he was certain that the easiest way to win the elections was to publicly humiliate Zelensky in a debate. As soon as the national exit poll became public, Poroshenko started an active campaign demanding for a debate with Zelensky. Many so-called experts said that Zelensky would refuse the offer and still carry the elections by a margin. But it is Zelensky who we're talking about. He is the comedian, and for years his job was to mock politicians exactly like Poroshenko. On 3rd of April, a new video was uploaded to his channel. What you're about to see is likely the most baddest debate invitation of all time.
Звертаюсь до Петра Порошенко. Ви кличете мене на дебати. Мріяли, що я втечу, відморожусь, заховаюсь. Ні, я це не ви у 14-му році. Я приймаю виклик. Ось мої умови. Чекаю на вас тут, на НСК Олімпійській. Дебати відбудуться перед народом України. Усі канали мають право транслювати дебати наживо. Усі журналісти мають право бути присутніми. Кандидати повинні обов'язково пройти медичну експертизу і довести народу, що серед них немає ні алкоголіків, ні наркоманів. Країні потрібен здоровий президент. В знак поваги, як мінімум, до третини громадян України ви повинні публічно сказати, що дебати відбудуться не з маріонеткою Кремля чи Коломойського, не з ватником, не з малоросом, не з бидлом, не з клоуном, а з кандидатом в президенти України Володимиром Зеленським. Даю вам 24 години. Думайте.
The debate was indeed a public humiliation, but not for Zelensky, rather for Poroshenko, as he was being torn apart with all the questions he was hiding from during his presidency. At one point, Zelensky invited him to kneel down as an apology to all the mothers who lost their sons at war, and did so himself. Poroshenko obliged, and this photo symbolized the start of a new era in Ukrainian politics. The old president facing the people with his back, and the new leader, young and courageous, open to his compatriots. 2 days later, on April 21st, second round of the elections took place. This time, the figure standing beside Zelensky's name was the highest in history, 73.2%. It can be argued that Zelensky would have won the elections without all the fancy, innovative technologies used by his team. But by looking at this case in closer detail, analyzing every step of his victory, it becomes undisputed that the Ukrainian comedian has really changed political campaigning forever. Would he be really scoring so high if he attended all the talk shows where he would be personally targeted by the journalists? Would he be able to present himself as a politician of a new generation? Would people really trust him following many disappointments with the TV-originated leaders? Many questions can be asked, but an answer emerged in Ukrainian politics 3 months later, during the parliamentary elections. A nationwide famous rock singer, Sviatoslav Vakarchuk, and the complete failure of his party The Voice perfectly display what would happen if Zelensky took the standard path. Vakarchuk was also a popular public figure, yet used a traditional approach to promoting his party. Now, this graph displays a rating of a candidate divided by their initial rating. So, for example, if you're polling at 10% and you enter the race with just 5, your value would be 10 on 5, 2. This graph shows the first 2 months of campaigning for Vakarchuk and Zelensky. As we can see, what would happen if Zelensky took the standard path is there would be an initial hype created, but it would soon dry out as Zelensky would be eaten by all the political gurus who have exceeded their skills of talking rather than doing, which is exactly what happened to Vakarchuk, as his lack of experience was evident in all the talk shows he attended. Nor would Zelensky win by using his TV series as a promise of bright future. It gave him an initial rating of 13%, but he couldn't hope for more. After all, can you really connect with the voters through TV? In the age of social media, people want to have some sort of a personal connection to you as a candidate and have an insight into your life. What Zelensky's team did with the YouTube channel allowed people to feel like a part of the team. For the first time, their importance was emphasized. For the first time, they didn't feel like numbers, but like actual people. Is this a trend we will see more of in the future? I believe so. In the age when Earth faces major problems like climate change and possible armed conflicts, it is the young and progressive leaders that come to power. Zelensky's PR team won 7 Polaris Awards given out by the European Association of Political Consulting, which awards the best political campaigns around the world. 7 is the highest number in the history of Polaris. The world changes, and so do the politicians elected. Only in 2019 were we able to rethink the concept of political campaigning as a whole, as we finally got a 40-year-old comedian to do it for us. Thank you.